The Empire's overconfidence. The galaxy was in turmoil. A massive empire had spread its dark wings across countless planets, crushing anyone who dared to oppose its rule. With an army unmatched by any other force, the Empire had become the dominant power in the universe. The people in charge of the Empire, ruthless leaders, believed that they were unstoppable. Every rebellion had been crushed. Every planet that resisted had been destroyed. They had seen nothing but success for decades, and the Empire's confidence grew with each victory. The leaders sat in their high council chambers, overlooking star systems and planets through giant windows. Their faces were cold, showing no emotion as they watched the unfolding war on holographic displays. For them, this war was nothing more than a game they had already won. They had defeated every species, crushed every enemy, and they believed that Earth, the last human stronghold, would be no different. The Empire had already sent fleets to countless planets, each one more powerful than the last. These fleets were built with the latest technology, weapons, and ships designed to obliterate anything in their path. The soldiers who fought for the Empire were feared across the galaxy. Their ships were fast and powerful, and their weapons could destroy planets. No one had ever come close to defeating them. However, there were whispers in the galaxy, whispers about Earth. The people who lived there, humans, were said to be weak. Their technology was far behind the Empire's, their armies were small, and their ships were old. The Empire dismissed these whispers as nothing more than rumors spread by desperate survivors. They couldn't believe that the humans would pose any real threat. They were simply a small, isolated species on the edge of the galaxy. The Empire's leaders had laughed at the idea that the humans could be a serious challenge. They saw them as insignificant, a mere annoyance that would soon be wiped out. They couldn't fathom the possibility of defeat. The Empire had seen countless species fall before them. Why would humans be any different? But one leader, a general named Kel, began to grow uneasy. He had seen how resilient humans were. They had fought back in ways no one had expected, clinging to their last hope. Their resistance wasn't like the others he had faced. Kel had served in many battles, but there was something about Earth that troubled him. Perhaps it was their sheer determination to survive. Perhaps it was the way they fought with a desperation that made their every move unpredictable. But even Kel's doubts were quickly silenced. His commanders told him that the Empire's fleet was unbeatable, that the human forces were no match for their superior technology. Kel was reminded to stay focused on the mission, destroy Earth, and crush the last of the rebellion. So the Empire sent its most advanced fleet to Earth. It was led by Admiral Vorn, a fierce and brilliant strategist known throughout the galaxy for his unmatched success in battle. Vorn had crushed hundreds of enemies in the past, and he was eager to add Earth to his list of victories. The Empire's confidence was at an all-time high, and the thought that anything could stand in their way seemed laughable. But as the fleet moved closer to Earth's solar system, something strange happened. The Empire's scouts reported an unusual signal coming from deep within the solar system, right near the human home planet. It wasn't a military signal, but a faint, almost forgotten transmission. The scouts had dismissed it at first, but then the signal grew stronger. Admiral Vorn didn't think much of it. He had heard about Earth's last hope, an ancient ship called the USS Blackstar. It was rumored to be a powerful weapon, but that was all it was, a rumor. The Empire had tracked down every major human ship in the galaxy, and no one had ever seen the Blackstar in person. It was just a story to keep hope alive among the humans. Vorn was sure of it. The Empire's fleet would easily crush whatever was left of Earth's defenses. As the fleet entered Earth's space, the reality of their situation set in. They were ready to crush the humans, but there was something strange in the air. The ships from Earth were moving in ways they had never expected. They weren't like the fleets the Empire had faced before. The human ships, though smaller, had a power to them that was hard to explain. They moved with precision and confidence, unlike the disorganized fleets of other species. Vorn smiled as he looked at the Earth fleet from his flagship. They think they can stop us. This is nothing, he muttered under his breath. His fleet was far superior, and their firepower was unmatched. The humans stood no chance. But as the battle began, the first hint of something different appeared, a blast of energy. An enormous wave struck the Empire's fleet, forcing them to fall back. The energy was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was strong, powerful, and relentless. The humans weren't backing down. They were fighting, not like desperate survivors, but like warriors who had something to prove. It was almost as if they knew they had a secret weapon. Something hidden, something powerful. Vorn was puzzled. What are they hiding? He asked, his voice cold. He couldn't believe his eyes. The humans were not running in fear as he had expected. They were standing their ground. For the first time in a long while, the Empire's fleet was forced to reconsider. Perhaps, just perhaps, they had underestimated the humans. Back on Earth, in the control rooms and underground bunkers, the human leaders were beginning to prepare for what they knew would be the fight of their lives. The resistance wasn't about to let Earth fall without a fight, but even they weren't sure what was coming next. The rumors about the US Blackstar had been just that. Rumors. No one knew if it truly existed, but there was something in the air that gave them hope. The first shots had been fired, and the war was no longer in the Empire's favor. The humans had given them something they had never expected: doubt. And that doubt would spread like wildfire. The Empire was no longer the unbeatable force they had once been. The battle for Earth was just beginning. And no one, least of all the Empire, knew what was about to unfold. The Empire's fleet had underestimated Earth's resilience, and the first shockwave of battle was enough to set the stage for what would become one of the most intense and surprising confrontations in the galaxy. As the human ships retaliated, Admiral Vorn's once confident expression turned to one of doubt. His fleet, the pride of the Empire, had been designed to strike down entire civilizations with ease. Yet here they were, facing an unexpected resistance from a species they had long dismissed as weak. In the cold expanse of space, the human ships moved with surprising coordination. They weren't just firing blindly into the void like the other rebellious forces the Empire had crushed. Each human ship seemed to have a purpose, moving in tandem, dodging the Empire's devastating strikes, and striking back with precision. The energy from their weapons was strange, unfamiliar, and much stronger than any technology the Empire had encountered before. The Empire had thought Earth's fleet was made up of outdated vessels. They had believed that the human ships were nothing more than relics of a lost time. Now it was clear they were facing something entirely different. Admiral Vorn's tactical genius had always relied on overwhelming firepower and perfect coordination, but now he was forced to adjust his strategy. He ordered his fleet to split, attempting to outmaneuver the humans and encircle them. But no matter what angle he tried, the human ships seemed to be everywhere. It was as if they knew his every move before he made it. The Empire's vast fleet had been designed to obliterate all in its path, but the humans weren't behaving like the weak species the Empire thought they were. They fought like soldiers who had faced impossible odds before and survived. In the midst of the chaos, a new signal cut through the interference of battle, a familiar transmission that sent ripples through the Empire's commanders. It was a signal they had hoped never to hear again. The unmistakable signal of the US Blackstar. The rumors were true. The legendary human warship had been hiding in plain sight, and now it was here. The US Blackstar wasn't just a myth, it was real, and it was about to change the entire course of the battle. The human fleet rallied around the Blackstar, their most powerful and secret weapon. For years, Earth's leaders had kept the Blackstar's existence a closely guarded secret, even from their own people. It was humanity's last hope, a ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its weapons were unlike anything the Empire had in its arsenal, and its sheer size and power were enough to send fear into the hearts of even the most battle-hardened warriors. As the Blackstar entered the fray, It unleashed a barrage of energy that ripped through the Empire's ships with devastating force. The once invincible Imperial fleet began to falter under the relentless assault. Every shot from the Blackstar seemed to find its mark, taking down one ship after another, each explosion sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Empire's fleet began to break apart, their formations scattering as they struggled to regroup. For the first time in years, Admiral Vorn felt the heat of true fear. He had seen many fleets burn in the fire of battle, but never had he seen such devastation. The humans were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting to win, and they had just proven that they had the means to do so. The Blackstar wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of humanity's defiance, a message to the Empire that they had made a grave mistake in underestimating Earth. Every shot it fired was a reminder that the humans had more to give than the Empire had ever imagined. The Empire's confidence had turned into panic, and the once invincible fleet was now struggling to hold its ground. Admiral Vorn's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. He had spent years perfecting strategies, learning how to deal with enemies on every front, but he had never faced anything like this. The humans had no right to be this powerful. How had they managed to keep such a weapon hidden for so long? How had they built something capable of destroying entire fleets with such precision? He had to find the answer, or the Empire would lose this war, and with it, their reign over the galaxy. Back on Earth, the human commanders were watching the battle unfold with a mixture of hope and disbelief. The Blackstar had been their secret weapon, but they had never expected it to have this much of an impact. The battle was turning in their favor, but they knew it wouldn't last. The Empire had far more resources, and even with the Blackstar on their side, it was only a matter of time before reinforcements arrived. But for now, the humans had the upper hand. The Blackstar's weapons continued to tear through the Empire's fleet, and the Empire's ships were beginning to retreat. The Empire's leaders were furious, scrambling to regroup and find a way to counter the threat. The battle was far from over, but the tide had shifted. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They had shown the Empire that they were more than just a small, forgotten species on the edge of the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never be the same. As the battle raged on, both sides knew that this was only the beginning. The Empire might have underestimated Earth, but the humans had no intention of letting that mistake go unpunished. The war was changing, and the USS Blackstar was the harbinger of that change. The Empire's overconfidence was their greatest mistake, and the humans had just begun to prove that they would not be so easily defeated. The battle raged on across the vast emptiness of space. The once dominant Imperial fleet was now being torn apart by the relentless assault of humanity's most powerful weapon, the USS Blackstar. The enormous warship glided through the chaos, its energy weapons unleashing devastation with every shot. The Empire's fleet, which had once seemed invincible, now appeared vulnerable, disorganized, and on the brink of collapse. Admiral Vorn stood at the helm of the flagship of the Imperial fleet, his once confident demeanor replaced by frustration and fear. His tactical mind raced, trying to come up with a plan to counter the overwhelming power of the Blackstar. He had faced countless enemies in his long career, but nothing had prepared him for this. The human's resilience was unlike anything he had ever seen. And now, their greatest weapon, the Blackstar, had arrived. It was a game changer. The Blackstar wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of Earth's resolve, a vessel of unimaginable power. Its energy beams ripped through the Empire's ships like a knife through paper, and no matter how much the Empire's fleet tried to regroup, it felt like every move they made was anticipated. Every time they tried to outmaneuver the Blackstar, it was already there, waiting. Admiral Vorn watched in disbelief as one of his most advanced warships exploded in a burst of light, its remains drifting aimlessly into space. The humans were methodical in their assault, every shot finding its mark. The Blackstar's weapons were unlike anything the Empire had seen. Its shields stronger, its propulsion systems faster. It was as if the humans had learned to fight in a way that no other species had, using cunning and strategy rather than sheer numbers. The Empire's fleet began to scatter, attempting to flee from the unrelenting attack, but it was too late. The Blackstar's weapons continued to strike down ship after ship, its power seemingly endless. Even Vorn, a man known for his strategic brilliance, couldn't fathom how the humans had managed to create such a ship. Earth had been a backwater planet, a species dismissed as primitive by the galactic powers. How had they built such a powerful force? How had they hidden it from the Empire for so long? On the other side of the battle, the humans' commanders watched as their forces, once the underdogs, began to gain the upper hand. The Blackstar had leveled the playing field. It had given the humans a fighting chance, and they were taking full advantage of it. But despite their victories, they knew that the battle wasn't over. The Empire was still a powerful force, and while they had inflicted heavy losses, it was only a matter of time before reinforcements arrived. In the heat of battle, General Ilara stood on the command deck of the Blackstar, watching the chaos unfold. The battle had turned in their favor, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Empire wouldn't give up so easily. She turned to her officers, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "We've made our move," General Ilara said. "But this won't end here. The Empire will send reinforcements. We need to be ready for the next phase of the war." Her words were met with nods of agreement. While the Blackstar had proven its power, the humans were far from overconfident. The war had only just begun, and they needed to prepare for what was coming next. The Empire would not be defeated by a single strike. As the Blackstar continued its assault, Admiral Vorn was forced to retreat. His once perfect plans had fallen apart, and now he was trying to salvage whatever was left of his fleet. His command ship, once a symbol of imperial might, was now battered and scarred from the humans' relentless attacks. He stared out into space, his mind working furiously, knowing that this battle was far from over. The Empire had underestimated Earth. That much was clear. They had believed that humanity was weak, primitive, and incapable of standing against them. Now, the tables had turned, and they were on the defensive. The humans had a weapon unlike any other, and they were not afraid to use it. The Blackstar had given them an advantage, but it was more than just the ship itself. It was the message that it sent to the Empire. Humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. They had arrived, and they were not going anywhere. Vorn clenched his fists in frustration. How had this happened? How had a species he thought so insignificant become such a powerful force? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. The Empire had always prided itself on its superiority, its dominance over every other species. But now, that dominance was slipping away. It wasn't just the Blackstar that threatened the Empire, it was the humans themselves. Their spirit, their drive, their willingness to fight for their survival. It was something that the Empire hadn't accounted for. Back on Earth, the mood was tense but hopeful. The humans had won their first major victory against the Empire, but everyone knew that the war was far from over. The Blackstar had proven to be a powerful weapon, but humanity's strength lay not just in their technology, but in their unity and determination. They had come together to fight back against an enemy they had once thought invincible. And now, they had a chance to win. The humans were ready for what was to come. They had faced their greatest challenge and had emerged victorious. But there was still much to do. The Empire would return, and when they did, the humans would be ready. The war had just begun, and the USS Blackstar was the spark that had ignited a fire that would change the galaxy forever. As the battle continued to unfold, the humans knew they had the strength to push forward. The Empire had made a grave mistake in underestimating them, and they would pay the price. The tide had turned, but the war was far from over. The humans would fight, and they would win. The USS Blackstar had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The silence in the void of space was broken by the violent sounds of explosions, the constant rumble of weapons fire, and the distant hum of the USS Blackstar as it charged forward. The battle had escalated in a way no one had expected. The Empire had regrouped, but the humans had not slowed down. With the Blackstar leading the charge, Earth's forces were relentless, pushing the Empire back inch by inch, sector by sector. Admiral Vorn paced back and forth in his command center, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. His eyes, once filled with the confidence of an untouchable conqueror, were now filled with a deep frustration. Every time he thought he had regained control, the Blackstar reappeared, devastating his forces and crushing his morale. The Empire had never faced such a challenge. The humans' ingenuity, determination, and raw power were not something they had prepared for. "Sir, we've lost contact with the 7th Fleet," a communication officer reported. Vorn's face tightened, his jaw clenched. The 7th Fleet had been one of the strongest contingents in his command. And now it was nothing more than a floating wreck in space. It was clear now. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their very existence. And they were doing so with an intensity that no one had anticipated. "Send reinforcements," Vorn ordered, though he knew it was a desperate measure. "We can't afford to lose any more ground. The humans will strike again, and this time, we'll be ready." But deep down, Vorn knew he wasn't entirely sure how to counter the Blackstar. No one had seen anything like it before. Its weapons were more powerful than anything in the Empire's arsenal, and its shield seemed to withstand any attack. It was as if the Blackstar was invincible, and that thought alone sent a shiver down his spine. The humans had turned the tables, and now they were in control. The Blackstar continued its relentless assault, weaving through space with expert precision. Its weapons fired with deadly accuracy, tearing apart Imperial ships with each blast. The crew aboard the Blackstar, though far fewer in number than the Empire's fleet, were executing their mission flawlessly. They moved with a sense of purpose, knowing that their success could change the course of the war. General Ilara stood at the command deck, watching as the enemy fleet continued to fall apart. She had been in many battles, but this one felt different. There was something about this fight, something that made it feel like more than just a military operation. The humans had finally stepped onto the galactic stage, and they were making their mark. The Empire had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. "Sir," one of the officers said, looking up from his console, "we've identified another Imperial fleet incoming. It's bigger than the last one." General Ilara's face hardened, but she remained calm. The Empire was not going to go down without a fight. That much was clear. They would throw everything they had at the Blackstar in a last-ditch effort to stop them. But Ilara knew that the Blackstar wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of everything humanity had worked for, and she was ready to fight with everything she had. "Prepare for the next engagement," she said firmly. "We're not finished yet." Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the Imperial fleet was beginning to take heavy losses. The sight of their massive warships crumbling under the might of the Blackstar sent shockwaves through their ranks. They had never been defeated like this before. The Empire was used to being the victors, the unstoppable force in the galaxy. But now, for the first time in centuries, they were fighting for their very survival. The Blackstar was no longer just a weapon. It was a statement, a message to the Empire that humanity would no longer be dismissed. It was the symbol of a new power, one that had been underestimated for far too long. Back on Earth, the mood was tense but hopeful. The news of the Empire's retreat had spread like wildfire, and the people of Earth were beginning to understand just how important their struggle was. The war wasn't over, but they had made progress. They had fought back against an enemy that seemed invincible, and they had won. The Blackstar was the key to their success, but it was more than just the ship. It was the spirit of the people who fought aboard it, the willingness to sacrifice everything for the future of humanity. "How much longer can the Blackstar keep up this pace?" asked one of the officers aboard the ship. "The Empire won't stop." General Ilara glanced at the officer, her expression unyielding. "As long as we have to," she replied. "We'll fight until the end. This is our fight now, and we're not backing down." The Empire's next move would determine the future of the galaxy. The humans had shown that they were capable of extraordinary things, but the Empire would not surrender easily. They would fight back with everything they had, but now the humans knew that they could win. They had the Blackstar, and they had each other, and that, they realized, was enough to change the galaxy forever. As the Blackstar continued its mission of destruction, the next phase of the war loomed large. The Empire was regrouping, and it was clear that the battle for supremacy in the galaxy was far from over. But humanity had shown its strength, and they weren't about to let it go to waste. The tide had turned, and they were ready to finish what they had started. In the heart of space, amidst the smoke and rubble of the ongoing battle, the Blackstar was a beacon of hope. It wasn't just a ship, it was the embodiment of humanity's determination, resilience, and ability to adapt. The Empire had made the mistake of underestimating them, and now they were paying the price. The war was changing, and it was humanity that held the upper hand. For Admiral Vorn, the realization was sinking in. He had miscalculated. He had believed that the Empire's might was invincible, but now that belief was crumbling. The USS Blackstar had arrived, and with it, the humans had brought with them something far more dangerous than advanced technology. They had brought their will to fight, and that was something no empire could defeat. The battle was no longer a question of who would win. It was a question of how much the Empire had left to give. The USS Blackstar had already made its mark, but the real test was about to begin. The Empire had always been powerful, but in the face of humanity's unrelenting assault, its power was starting to fade. The once great warships that had torn through countless civilizations were now struggling against a force they had never expected: humanity's will to survive. Admiral Vorn stood in the midst of the chaos, watching his fleet slowly break apart. His once proud fleet had lost its edge, and the Empire's soldiers were beginning to lose their composure. It was a sight he had never witnessed in his entire career. The humans had thrown themselves into the fight with a ferocity that no one had anticipated. He had underestimated them. And now, with the Blackstar at the helm, humanity was showing its true power. "We need to regroup," Vorn muttered, pacing back and forth. "Our ships are falling apart. We can't sustain this fight forever." But his officers didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. The morale of the Empire's forces had plummeted. The human fleet, though smaller in number, had fought with such precision that they had begun to slice through the Empire's lines like a hot knife through butter. It was clear to everyone now: the humans were not a force to be taken lightly. Meanwhile, on the Blackstar, General Ilara was leading her crew with unwavering determination. She had been through countless battles, but this one was different. The stakes were higher. The survival of humanity was at risk, and she knew that if they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. There could be no turning back. The war had reached a tipping point, and the humans were on the verge of turning the tide in their favor. "Hold steady, everyone," General Ilara said, her voice firm but calm. "This is our moment. We've already proven that we can stand against the Empire. We've proven that we're not just survivors, we're warriors. Let's finish this." Her words were more than just encouragement. They were a reminder of everything that had led to this moment. The people of Earth had never been the aggressors, but they had been forced to fight. And now, they were winning. The battle raged on, but the momentum had shifted. The Empire's once unstoppable forces were now stumbling. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, the Blackstar would appear, outmaneuvering them and delivering devastating blows. The Blackstar's weapons were unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. Its technology was far more advanced than anything in their fleet, and its firepower was unmatched. "What's left of their fleet?" General Ilara asked one of her officers. "Not much," the officer replied. "We've already taken out 3 more capital ships. The Empire is losing their grip." The news was good, But Ilara knew better than to get complacent. The Empire would not go down without one last desperate attempt to crush them. But she was confident. Humanity had already proven that they could endure, and they would keep fighting until the very end. Back aboard one of the remaining Imperial ships, Admiral Vorn was growing increasingly desperate. His officers were reporting more and more losses, and the situation was quickly becoming untenable. His fleet was scattered, with little left to defend against the relentless onslaught of the Blackstar and its allies. "They're getting closer," Vorn muttered as he stared at the map of the battlefield. "We can't keep up the fight much longer." The Empire's once powerful forces were now scrambling, trying to defend against an enemy they had once laughed at. The tables had turned, and now it was the humans who were in control. It was a bitter pill for Vorn to swallow. He had always believed that the Empire's might was unbeatable, but in the face of the Blackstar, he could see that his belief was wrong. The Empire was no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. On the Blackstar, the crew was ready. They knew that victory was within their grasp. The Empire had already been shattered, and now they had to finish what they had started. General Ilara stood at the command deck, her eyes fixed on the advancing Imperial ships. Her heart was heavy, knowing that the final battle was about to take place. "Prepare for the final push," Ilara ordered. "We've won the battle, but we have to make sure we end it. We don't stop until every last Imperial ship is defeated." The crew nodded, their resolve unshaken. They had come so far. They had fought against the impossible and come out on top. Now, they were ready to end the war once and for all. The Blackstar moved forward with terrifying speed, its weapons charged and ready to unleash destruction. The remaining Imperial ships tried to regroup, but they were too late. The Blackstar's devastating cannons lit up the dark void of space, tearing through the hulls of the Empire's ships. The explosion of energy was massive, and for the first time, the Empire's forces were truly on the run. Vorn watched helplessly as his fleet was reduced to rubble. There was nothing left. The Empire had been beaten. The humans had won. The Blackstar had delivered the final blow. As the remnants of the Empire's fleet disappeared into the distance, General Ilara allowed herself a brief moment of relief. They had done it. Humanity had proven that they were not just survivors. They were conquerors, and they had rewritten the future of the galaxy. The Empire was no more. The war was over, and humanity had won. But General Ilara knew that this victory was just the beginning. The Blackstar had shown the galaxy that Earth's fleet was not weak. It was a force to be reckoned with, and now humanity would rise to take its place among the stars. As the last remnants of the Empire's fleet drifted into nothingness, the once deafening roar of battle gave way to a heavy, almost eerie silence. The victory was undeniable, but it left a bitter aftertaste. The Blackstar had delivered the final blow, but now, humanity was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered galaxy. General Ilara stood at the command deck of the Blackstar, staring out into the empty space. The stars twinkled in the distance, peaceful, calm. Yet, the world around her had changed forever. The once formidable empire was no more, and humanity had claimed its place among the stars. The crew had fought bravely, and they had won. But Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that something was still unsettled. "This victory, it feels hollow," she murmured, almost to herself. The crew members around her remained silent. They had all fought for this moment, but now that it was here, they too felt the weight of the battle. The cost of their triumph was far greater than they had anticipated. Thousands of soldiers and civilians from both sides had perished in the war. The galaxy had been left scared. Though humanity had succeeded, the price had been steep. As the crew carried out their duties, Ilara remained on the bridge, lost in thought. The fight was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. How would humanity rebuild in a galaxy now devoid of its greatest empire? What would they do with the power they had earned? There was no precedent for this, no history to guide them. The war had left the galaxy in ruins, but humanity had emerged as its new leader. And yet, Ilara knew leadership came with burdens. As her thoughts drifted, a voice broke through the quiet. "General Ilara, the Council is requesting your presence," said Lieutenant Carter, a trusted officer. Ilara stood from her chair, straightening her uniform. "I'll be there shortly," she said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty inside her. The Council was convening aboard the flagship of the newly formed human fleet. Ilara had expected this. After such a monumental victory, the leaders of humanity would need to discuss their next steps. The questions were inevitable. What now? What was the future for humanity? And what role would the Blackstar play in this new era? When Ilara entered the council room, the room fell silent. The men and women gathered there had all been a part of the war effort in some way. Some had fought on the front lines. Others had provided support. They all shared the same weary look, the exhaustion of battle still evident in their eyes. But there was something else, something that couldn't be ignored. The tension. Ilara took her seat at the head of the table. The council members turned their eyes toward her, waiting for her to speak. "General," President Calloway began, his voice calm but with a note of urgency. "We've won the war, but the galaxy is in ruins. The Empire, our enemy, is gone, but the rest of the galaxy, is it ready for what comes next?" Ilara knew the question was coming. It was one that had been on everyone's mind since the Empire's fall. The galaxy had been under Imperial control for centuries, and with the collapse of their reign, there was a massive power vacuum. "I don't know," Ilara replied honestly. "The galaxy is broken, but we've proven something. Humanity is capable of standing up to any challenge. We've earned our place here." "And what about the rest of the galaxy?" called out Admiral Wright, a member of the council who had led many of the operations against the Empire. "We can't just leave it in chaos. The planets, the colonies, they'll need help." Ilara nodded solemnly. "We will help them, but we must remember that we've only just started. Humanity is not just here to take control. We are here to rebuild, to lead, and to guide. We've shown our strength, but it's time to show our compassion." The room was quiet for a moment as the weight of her words settled over the council, but President Calloway was quick to speak again. "And what about the Blackstar?" he asked, his tone more reserved. "Its power, its weapons. How do we use it? We've seen what it's capable of. Should we continue to wield it in the same way?" Ilara hesitated. The Blackstar had been humanity's weapon of last resort. It had been the ship that turned the tide of war, that had ensured their victory. But now, in a galaxy struggling to rebuild, could humanity afford to use such power recklessly? "We don't use it recklessly," Ilara said firmly. "The Blackstar is a symbol of our strength, but also of our responsibility. We will use it to maintain peace, to ensure the Empire's legacy of tyranny is never repeated. But we must not let it define us. The galaxy must not fear us. They must see us as protectors, not conquerors." The room was silent again. But this time, there was a sense of understanding. The Blackstar was more than just a weapon. It was a reminder of what humanity could achieve, but it could also be a tool for peace if used wisely. "Then we rebuild," President Calloway said, his voice firm with resolve. "Humanity has a new place in the galaxy, and it is one of leadership, not tyranny. We will help those who need us. We will rebuild what was destroyed, and we will ensure that the mistakes of the past are never repeated." Ilara nodded, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. The war was over, but the true work had only just begun. Humanity had proven its worth. Now it was time to prove its humanity. "We will rebuild," Ilara said, her voice steady and strong. "And we will do it together." With that, the council began to discuss the next steps. The Blackstar would be used to restore order, to protect the weak, and to ensure that the galaxy would never again fall under the rule of tyrants. The war had ended, but the journey for humanity was just beginning. And General Ilara knew that this was the dawn of a new era for the galaxy, an era of hope and of human strength. The future was theirs to shape. The silence that had followed the victory was gradually replaced by an air of determination. The galaxy, though wounded and fractured, was beginning to stir with the possibility of hope. The war had left scars that would never heal completely, but humanity had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more unified than ever before. General Ilara stood at the edge of the Blackstar's bridge, gazing at the vastness of space. She had seen the worst of the galaxy's darkness, but now she could see the first light of a new dawn breaking on the horizon. The Council had made their decision. The rebuilding process was underway. In the wake of their victory, humanity had been tasked with guiding the galaxy through its recovery. Many factions, star systems, and species had fallen into disarray after the Empire's downfall. It was up to the human fleet to help restore order, offer protection, and rebuild what had been destroyed. But for Ilara, it was not just about restoring balance to the galaxy. It was about ensuring that humanity would lead in a way that would be remembered not as conquerors, but as saviors. The Blackstar, the symbol of their power, would serve as a beacon of hope. It would not be a weapon of fear, but one of protection. The first mission of the new era was underway. The Blackstar had been dispatched to the wreckage of the capital world, once a shining hub of the Empire's control. Now it was a crumbled ruin. But there, in the midst of the devastation, lay hope. Humanity's task was not to claim the ashes for themselves, but to offer their hand to those who needed it. They would help rebuild, offer resources, and teach those who had lost their way how to move forward. As Ilara prepared to leave the bridge for her meeting with her officers, Lieutenant Carter, her trusted right hand, stepped forward. "General," Carter began, "we've received transmissions from several worlds. They're asking about the Blackstar's next move. They want to know if we'll be here for them." Ilara nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly. The weight of those words was heavy. The Blackstar had become more than just a warship. It had become a symbol of human resolve. But could they truly live up to the expectations placed on them? "We will be there," Ilara replied firmly. "We will not abandon them. The Blackstar's purpose now is to protect and rebuild. This is our legacy now." The crew aboard the Blackstar had changed in many ways. The war had tempered them, sharpened their resolve, and united them as one force. They had fought for this moment, for this chance to reshape the galaxy into something better. And Ilara could feel the energy of the crew buzzing with anticipation. They were ready. But as much as they had succeeded, there was still much to do. The Empire's collapse had left a power vacuum, and not all the galaxy's factions were inclined to trust humanity's rise to power. There were still threats out there, old alliances, rebellious factions, and those who felt that the Empire's downfall meant the time for their own rise had come. These dangers would need to be dealt with. "Status update on the fleet," Ilara asked Carter, her voice calm but firm. She had been expecting reports like these. The galaxy wasn't going to be an easy place to navigate, and humanity's presence would have to be a balance of power and diplomacy. "They're ready, General," Carter replied. "Our fleet is scattered in various systems, working with local governments to restore order. The galaxy may have been shattered, but it's beginning to heal." Ilara nodded. Her thoughts turned to the future. This was not a time for hesitation. Humanity had proven its strength, and now it would prove its heart. With the Blackstar at the helm, they would not only defend the galaxy, they would be its leaders. "There's a long road ahead," Ilara said, "but I believe humanity is ready to walk it. We've shown them what we can do. Now it's time to show them who we truly are." As the Blackstar set course for the next world in need of assistance, Ilara felt the weight of her role as the leader of this new era. The galaxy, once ruled by the Empire, now looked to humanity for guidance. The war was over, but the true test had just begun. And as the Blackstar sailed through the stars, carrying the hopes of countless lives, Ilara knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy would never be the same again, and neither would humanity. The journey had only just begun, and with the Blackstar at their side, Humanity would never be afraid to face the future. The stars were now within their reach, and they would shape their own destiny. The final warning. The Galactic Council was powerful, perhaps the most powerful organization in the entire galaxy. Their reach stretched across countless star systems, each one bending to their will. But there was one planet they had always dismissed as insignificant: Earth. From their distant vantage point, Earth was still a young and struggling species, barely making a mark on galactic affairs. Its technology was primitive compared to the other advanced races that made up the Council. Its history was filled with conflict, war, and chaos. To the Council, it was simply a backwater world that could be ignored, at least until it began to stir in ways they hadn't anticipated. Earth had made incredible strides in the last few centuries. Its people had learned to reach the stars, create powerful technologies, and adapt to the harsh conditions of space. Yet, despite all this progress, they had still not earned the respect of the Galactic Council. They were a species to be kept in check, a species to be controlled. But that was about to change. The Council, tired of humanity's defiant behavior, decided it was time to act. They had made a decision. Earth would become part of the Council's ever-expanding domain. The humans would be forced to submit, just like so many other species before them. The warning was sent, a message broadcast across the vastness of space. It was simple, direct, and meant to break the spirit of humanity. This is the Galactic Council. Your planet is no longer free. You will surrender your sovereignty and join the collective. Failure to comply will result in your destruction. You have 7 days to respond. The message echoed through the stars, reaching every corner of the human colonies and cities. The Council believed that the humans would tremble in fear, that they would beg for mercy, or that they would crumble under the pressure. But they couldn't have been more wrong. On Earth, people were stunned at first. The very idea that the Council would target them seemed impossible. But then the reality set in. The humans weren't the weak species the Council thought they were. They had faced trials before. They had fought wars, conquered challenges, and survived disasters that would have destroyed any other race. And now, they faced a choice: to surrender or fight back. The United Terran Command, the governing body of Earth's military forces, convened in a secret meeting. For years, they had known that the Council would eventually make a move. They had prepared in silence, hiding their strength, waiting for the moment when they could strike. But now the time had come, and the choices were clear. General Miranda, one of Earth's most respected military leaders, stood before the room of officers and experts, her face grim but resolute. She had seen enough conflict in her lifetime to know when a fight was inevitable. "They think we are weak," she said, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "They think we'll bend, but we won't. Earth has always fought for its survival. And this time, we'll show them what we're really capable of." The officers around her nodded in agreement. They were ready for war, even though they knew it would be a fight like no other. The Galactic Council was vast, and their fleet was powerful, but Earth's fleet was ready. And the people of Earth had a weapon the Council could never predict: their unyielding spirit. Humanity had no intention of surrendering. They had learned from the past, from the mistakes of their own history, that true freedom came at a price, and they were willing to pay it. As the clock ticked down to the Council's deadline, Earth's military began to mobilize. Ships, long hidden in deep space, came to life, emerging from their silence. The fleet, once small and scattered, began to form a unified front. Human technology, refined and tested over years of struggle, was now ready for the challenge. But there was something else in the works, something far more dangerous and unexpected. Deep within Earth's defenses, a long-dormant program had been activated. It was a weapon unlike any other, something the Council could never have imagined. As the deadline drew nearer, the people of Earth watched anxiously. Some feared what would happen next, while others felt a sense of pride. This was a turning point for humanity. They would either submit to the will of the Galactic Council or show them just how dangerous they could be. The countdown reached its final moments, and the Galactic Council waited for Earth's response. The message had been sent. The offer of surrender had been given. And now, the fate of the human race rested on a single decision. And then, Earth responded. We will not bow. Prepare for war. With that simple message, humanity made its stance clear. The Galactic Council's calculations had been wrong. They had underestimated the human race. They had forgotten what Earth was truly capable of. And now, they would learn the hard way. The war had begun. The Galactic Council's High Command received Earth's response with disbelief. The idea that a primitive species like humanity would outright refuse their ultimatum was unthinkable. The Council had absorbed thousands of civilizations into its rule, most without resistance. Some had fought, but they had all been crushed in days. But humanity had done something unexpected. They had not only refused, but had sent a declaration of war. The Council's war strategists convened in an emergency meeting. Holograms of alien generals, admirals, and political leaders filled the enormous chamber, each one displaying a mixture of confusion and annoyance. This is ridiculous, Supreme Commander Valakor scoffed. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he stared at Earth's message. Do they truly believe they stand a chance? Our fleets outnumber them 1,000 to 1. Their technology is centuries behind. This war will be over before it even begins. A cybernetic alien from the Telthar Dominion nodded in agreement. Their resistance is foolish. We should send the purge fleets immediately. Wipe them out and take what remains. But not everyone in the room was convinced. High Strategist Lorvok, a veteran of countless campaigns, frowned as he analyzed the data. I have studied humans closely, he said, his voice carrying a note of caution. They are unlike any species we have conquered before. They do not break easily. The others dismissed his concerns. The Council had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, enforcing its will with overwhelming force. Earth would be no different. Meanwhile, back on Earth, preparations were in full motion. The United Terran Command had no illusions about the battle ahead. The Galactic Council's fleet was vast, spanning thousands of warships and battle stations. Earth's forces were a fraction of that size. On paper, they stood no chance. But humanity had always thrived in impossible situations. Across the solar system, hidden fleets began to mobilize. Massive warships, built in secrecy, emerged from asteroid fields and deep space stations. These were not the weak ships the Council believed humanity possessed. These were advanced war machines, designed for one purpose: survival. Admiral Richard Cole stood aboard the UNS Resolute, one of Earth's most powerful warships. His face was calm, but his mind was focused. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. They'll come expecting an easy victory, he said to his officers. We will show them how wrong they are. Earth's defenses were not just built for war. They were built for deception. The Galactic Council believed they were attacking a weak, unprepared planet. What they didn't know was that Earth had spent decades preparing for this war. Massive planetary shields were activated, hidden weapon stations came online, and stealth ships disappeared into the darkness of space. Humanity had learned from history: never fight a war on fair terms. As the final hours before the battle counted down, humanity prepared for the inevitable. The Galactic Council was coming, but Earth would not fall without a fight. And when the first Council warships entered the solar system, they were met with something they never expected: silence. No transmissions, no panic, no desperate pleas for mercy, only silence. And that silence was more terrifying than any war cry. The Galactic Council's fleet surged forward, their massive warships entering the Sol system like an unstoppable wave. Thousands of capital ships, each one larger than entire cities, drifted in perfect formation, their weapons primed and ready. The commanders expected resistance, perhaps a last-minute plea from Earth's leaders, a futile attempt to surrender. Instead, they were met with silence. Fleet Commander Valcor stood on the bridge of the Zirak Thul, his flagship, an enormous dreadnought with enough firepower to reduce continents to dust. His reptilian features twisted in irritation as he watched the empty void ahead. His fleet had passed Jupiter, yet no sign of Earth's defenses had appeared. "Something is wrong," said his tactical officer, a pale-skinned Exceltheri. The alien's glowing cybernetic eyes scanned the space ahead. Scanners show no active defense fleets, no satellites, no resistance at all. Valcor bared his sharp teeth in a grin. They are cowering, hiding in fear, just as all weak species do before they fall. The officer hesitated. Or, they are waiting for something. The words sent a ripple of unease through the bridge crew, but Valcor dismissed it with a wave of his clawed hand. He turned to his communications officer. "Send a system-wide broadcast," he commanded. "Tell them that their time is up. They have one last chance to surrender before we unleash our full power." The officer nodded and opened a channel. The message was sent. It echoed across the system, reaching Earth, its colonies, and every hidden outpost. But no reply came. And then, the first ship exploded. A massive explosion tore through one of the Galactic Council's frontline warships, a battleship nearly 2 kilometers long. It was their one moment. And then it was gone, shattered into millions of pieces, debris scattering into the void. Alarms blared across the fleet. Valcor spun toward his tactical officer. What just happened? Unknown. No energy readings, no weapon signatures. The officer shouted, frantically scanning his displays. The ship just vanished. Then another explosion. And another. One by one, warships erupted into fireballs, ripped apart by an invisible force. The fleet panicked. Pilots and commanders shouted in confusion, unable to locate the source of the attack. And then, from the darkness of space, Earth's fleet emerged. They did not charge forward in an obvious attack. They did not fire wildly, hoping to overwhelm the enemy. Instead, they struck like ghosts. Sleek black warships shimmered into existence from their stealth fields, emerging right in the middle of the Galactic Council's fleet. They were faster, more maneuverable, and equipped with weapons the Council had never seen before. Railguns fired at impossible speeds, slicing through shields like they were nothing. EMP blasts disabled enemy systems in seconds, leaving their massive warships dead in the void. Advanced eye-controlled drones swarmed like angry wasps, cutting through exposed hulls with surgical precision. The Galactic Council had come expecting a primitive enemy. Instead, they had walked straight into a trap. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Richard Cole watched the battle unfold. He stood calm, hands clasped behind his back, as Earth's forces executed their ambush with ruthless efficiency. "They're breaking," his second-in-command reported. "They weren't ready for this." "Good," Cole replied. His eyes remained fixed on the chaos outside. "Let them feel fear. Let them realize what they've done." Back in the enemy fleet, panic spread like wildfire. Commanders shouted conflicting orders. Some ships tried to retreat, but hyperspace drives refused to activate. Earth had deployed gravity wells, locking the Council's fleet in the battlefield. There was no escape. Valcor's confidence was gone. His claws dug into the armrest of his command chair, his mind racing. "This isn't possible," he whispered. "They were supposed to be weak." But humanity had never been weak. And now, the Galactic Council was learning that the hard way. The battlefield had transformed into a chaotic storm of destruction, a graveyard of burning wreckage drifting through the cold void of space as the once mighty Galactic Council fleet struggled to comprehend the nightmare unfolding before them. What should have been an effortless display of dominance, a simple extermination of a primitive species daring to defy them, had turned into a massacre, except it was their forces that were being slaughtered with terrifying precision. Admiral Richard Cole watched from the bridge of the Resolute, his expression calm but his mind razor-sharp, analyzing every unfolding moment of the battle with an almost machine-like focus. Earth's fleet had executed their ambush flawlessly, striking from the darkness like vengeful specters, appearing from stealth fields only long enough to unleash devastating attacks before vanishing again, leaving the enemy to fire blindly into empty space. The Galactic Council's warships, massive and lumbering, had been designed for brute force engagements, for overwhelming their foes through sheer size and firepower. But against the surgical precision of Earth's advanced weaponry and artificial intelligence-driven tactics, they were little more than slow-moving targets waiting to be torn apart. Across the battlefield, elite human strike teams deployed from their stealth corvettes, boarding enemy dreadnoughts with brutal efficiency. Hardened operatives in mechanized exosuits, their armor reinforced with energy-absorbing plating, stormed the enemy ships like phantoms of war, cutting through defenders with relentless precision. The Galactic Council's soldiers, accustomed to fighting weaker, subjugated species that surrendered at the first show of force, found themselves hopelessly outmatched as human warriors moved with terrifying coordination, their weapons enhanced by advanced targeting algorithms, their strategies driven by decades of secret preparation for the inevitable day that the Council would come for Earth. Aboard his flagship, the Zirak Thul, Fleet Commander Valkyr gripped the edges of his command throne so tightly that his claws dug deep into the metal, his mind struggling to reconcile the impossible reality unfolding before him. Every scenario, every prediction, every intelligence report had assured him that humanity would fall within hours, that their resistance would amount to nothing more than a temporary inconvenience before they were wiped from existence. And yet, here they were, shattering his fleet, turning the Council's so-called unstoppable force into nothing more than burning debris drifting through the void. "Sir, we must retreat," one of his officers cried out, desperation in his voice, as explosions rocked the command deck, power surges causing the lights to flicker violently. "Our forces are in disarray. We need to regroup." But there was nowhere to retreat. Earth's forces had deployed gravitational disruptors across the system, trapping the Council fleet within a web of artificial singularities that prevented them from entering hyperspace. The Council's mighty warships, the pride of their empire, were now little more than stranded behemoths, waiting to be hunted down one by one. Valkyr's sharp-toothed mouth twisted in fury, his reptilian eyes darting across the tactical display, searching for any opening, any weakness, any sliver of hope that could turn this battle around. But there was none. His fleet was crumbling, his officers panicking, his soldiers being torn apart by human strike teams that moved like shadows through the corridors of his ships. And worse, the humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting with vengeance, a cold and merciless wrath unlike anything the Council had ever faced before. On Earth, billions of people watched the battle unfold through secure military transmissions, their eyes locked onto screens displaying the devastation in real time. They had not asked for this war, but they had long prepared for the moment when the Galactic Council would come, believing humanity to be weak, believing they could do to Earth what they had done to so many other civilizations before. But the Council had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated what humanity would do when faced with extinction. And now, they were paying the price. Admiral Cole gave a single nod to his weapons officer, his voice calm yet filled with the weight of an entire species behind it. "Activate the final phase." Across the battlefield, hidden human warships powered up their most devastating weapons: planet-cracking railguns, gravity imploders, and plasma bombardment cannons that could reduce entire fleets to nothing but vaporized particles. The Galactic Council had committed one of the greatest crimes in the history of the galaxy. They had threatened Earth, believing it to be just another insignificant world to be conquered. Now, the humans would show them the true cost of their arrogance. The Galactic Council fleet, once the dominant force in the known universe, was now a graveyard of burning wreckage. Their mighty warships, once feared by countless civilizations, were reduced to drifting debris, shattered by the relentless assault of Earth's battle fleet. And yet, despite the overwhelming losses, some Council commanders still refused to accept the horrifying truth. Humanity was not just resisting. They were winning. On the bridge of the Zirak Thul, Fleet Commander Valcor stood frozen in disbelief. Every alarm blared around him, reports of entire squadrons being wiped out flooding his command display. But he barely heard them. He had fought in countless wars, had overseen the extermination of entire species, had crushed rebellions before they could even begin. Yet now, his forces were being torn apart with ruthless efficiency, their superior numbers meaningless against the brutal precision of Earth's war machine. A nearby officer, his voice trembling, snapped Valcor out of his daze. "Commander, we have lost all rear defensive formations. The humans are advancing on our capital ships. Our defenses are collapsing." Valcor turned sharply, his eyes burning with frustration. "Then rally the remaining ships. If we cannot escape, we fight to the last vessel. We are the Galactic Council, the rulers of the stars. We will not be defeated by a backwater species." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. Humanity was no backwater species. They were something far worse. They were the storm the Council had never prepared for, the nightmare that no one had foreseen. And now, the nightmare was real. Across the battlefield, Earth's warships advanced in perfect formation, their movements synchronized with inhuman precision. AI-driven battlecruisers calculated enemy trajectories with microsecond accuracy, their railguns tearing through Council dreadnoughts before they could even return fire. Stealth corvettes weaved through the chaos like wraiths, their weaponry striking weak points with devastating effect. The humans had turned the Council's own arrogance against them. And now, they were delivering judgment. Aboard the Resolute, Admiral Richard Cole watched the battlefield unfold, his expression unreadable. The battle was already won. The Council's forces were in complete disarray, their commanders panicking, their soldiers either surrendering or dying in vain attempts to fight back. And yet, he felt no satisfaction. This wasn't just war. This was vengeance. "Admiral," his weapons officer spoke, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of what came next. "We have confirmation. The last phase is ready." Cole nodded, his eyes locked onto the largest remaining Council warships still attempting to regroup. Even now, they refused to surrender. Even now, they clung to the belief that they could still turn the tide. But they couldn't. They had crossed a line that could never be undone. They had threatened Earth, and for that, there could be no mercy. With a simple gesture, Cole gave the final command. "End it." In an instant, Earth's fleet unleashed its most devastating weapons. From deep within the system, experimental rail cannons, hidden in asteroids, buried in long-forgotten moons, roared to life. Their projectiles moving so fast, they ignited the very space around them. The largest Council warships, the same behemoths that had once terrorized entire star systems, were obliterated in single strikes, torn apart like they were made of paper. High-orbit bombardment platforms unleashed energy lances capable of cutting through planetary crusts, their beams slicing through enemy ships as if they were mere shadows. And then came the AI-guided annihilation drones, silent, fast, and unstoppable. Thousands of them swarmed what little remained of the Council fleet, hacking into their systems, turning their own ships against them. In mere moments, the last of the enemy forces had been wiped from existence. The battle was over. A deafening silence filled the void, broken only by the crackling remains of ruined warships and the distant echoes of dying distress calls. Across the galaxy, those who had watched the battle unfold in horror now faced a new reality. The Galactic Council was no longer the dominant force of the universe. The balance of power had shifted. And humanity. Humanity had just made their message clear. They would not be threatened. They would not be conquered. And they would never, ever be underestimated again. The Galactic Council's homeworld, Prime Nexus, had never known fear. For thousands of years, it had stood as the center of the universe, its towering spires stretching high into the sky, its leaders commanding entire star systems with a mere whisper. From here, The Council had shaped the destiny of countless species, deciding which civilizations would rise and which would fall. No empire had ever dared to challenge their authority. No war had ever reached their doorstep. Until now. The skies above Prime Nexus burned. Massive explosions rippled across the upper atmosphere as Earth's war fleet unleashed its wrath. Council defense platforms, once thought impenetrable, crumbled under the relentless assault. Their planetary shields, reinforced by centuries of technological advancements, flickered and failed within minutes, unable to withstand the sheer firepower being unleashed upon them. Inside the Grand Hall, the heart of the Council's rule, the High Chancellor and his ministers watched in stunned silence as their world fell apart. This cannot be happening. One of the advisors stammered, his voice trembling. Our fleets were the strongest in the galaxy. Our defenses are gone. The Chancellor interrupted, his hands gripping the edges of the massive table before him. His once calm demeanor was gone, replaced by cold terror. For years, they had treated humanity as nothing more than an insignificant species, a race of upstarts who had dared to expand beyond their home system. The Council had believed that Earth's defiance would be crushed like all the others before them. They had been wrong. Now the very force they had dismissed, the species they had once mocked, stood on the edge of complete and total victory, and they showed no signs of stopping. A sudden tremor shook the chamber as the building's protective shielding collapsed. The distant roar of explosions grew louder, and the lights flickered as emergency power kicked in. Outside, the skies darkened as swarms of Earth's eye-controlled war drones descended toward the surface like an unrelenting storm. High Chancellor, another minister spoke, his voice desperate. We must open negotiations. We must surrender before. Before he could finish, the entire chamber was filled with a deep, resonating hum. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room. It was Admiral Richard Cole. His expression was unreadable, his eyes cold and calculating. The silence that followed was suffocating, as if the entire universe was holding its breath. For centuries, Cole's voice echoed, "Your council has ruled through fear. You have crushed worlds, enslaved species, and called it order. You have destroyed those who refused to kneel, calling it justice. And when humanity refused to bow, you chose war." No one in the chamber spoke. No one dared to. "You thought yourselves untouchable," Cole continued, his voice as calm as it was terrifying. "You thought Earth was just another world to be conquered. You thought wrong." The Chancellor swallowed hard, struggling to maintain his composure. There will be no negotiations," Cole interrupted. "There will be no surrender." A collective gasp filled the room. Some of the ministers collapsed into their seats, others simply froze, their minds unable to comprehend what was happening. Cole's eyes darkened. "You threatened Earth," he said. "Now the Galactic Council will answer for its crimes." The transmission ended. For a moment, there was nothing. Only silence. Only fear. And then the final attack began. Earth's warships descended upon Prime Nexus with terrifying precision. Strategic strikes crippled key infrastructure. Orbital bombardments reduced military installations to ruins. AI drones infiltrated the city's systems, disabling defenses and turning the Council's own technology against them. The world that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was now powerless. The Council's forces, the very backbone of their empire, had been obliterated. Their leaders, once untouchable, were now fleeing for their lives, hunted through their own streets by Earth's unstoppable forces. And above them, casting a shadow over the burning world, was Earth's flagship, the Nemesis, a vessel unlike any other, a symbol of Earth's vengeance. Humanity had given its final warning. And now, there would be no mercy. The fall of Prime Nexus was inevitable. The once mighty world, home to the most powerful rulers in the galaxy, now lay in ruins. Smoke and fire choked the skies as Earth's war fleet completed its final phase of devastation. The Galactic Council's last remaining strongholds crumbled under relentless orbital bombardments, and its greatest war machines, massive planetary defense walkers and towering citadels of destruction, had been reduced to nothing but shattered wreckage. Across the planet, Council forces attempted to mount a desperate last stand. Soldiers, once feared across the galaxy, now fought in terror, knowing they were outmatched. Earth's eye-controlled drones moved with eerie precision, eliminating targets without hesitation. Human ground forces, clad in advanced battle armor, swept through the burning streets, ensuring no remnants of the Council's power would remain. And above it all, watching from the bridge of Earth's flagship nemesis, Admiral Richard Cole stood in silence. His expression was unreadable as he gazed at the once glorious city below, now little more than smoldering ruins. For decades, the Council had ruled with arrogance, believing themselves invincible. They had enslaved entire species, destroyed entire civilizations, and they had thought Earth would be no different. They had learned their mistake too late. "Admiral," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Commander Lin, his second-in-command. "We have secured the Council chambers. Their leadership has been captured. Orders." Cole did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the massive holoscreen before him. Live footage displayed the heart of Prime Nexus, the Grand Hall, now surrounded by Earth's forces. The once proud leaders of the Galactic Council had been dragged from their hiding places, their ornate robes torn, their faces streaked with sweat and fear. A High Chancellor knelt at the center of the room, his hands trembling as he struggled to meet the cold, unyielding gaze of the human soldiers standing over him. We surrender," the Chancellor stammered, his voice weak. "Please, we were wrong. We see that now. Humanity is powerful. We." Cole's voice came over the comms, cutting him off. "Surrender." There was no anger in his tone, only a quiet certainty that sent a chill through the Council members. Did the Xilari people have the chance to surrender before you wiped them out? Did the Therum colonies get the opportunity to beg for mercy before you burned their worlds? The Chancellor paled. He had no answer. Cole continued. 500 billion lives gone. Entire species erased from existence. And you called it peace. You called it justice. His eyes darkened. Well, now we are bringing you justice. One of the remaining Council members, a reptilian diplomat from the Zenari race, fell to his knees. We were only following orders." A bitter laugh echoed through the chamber, one of the human soldiers. "That's exactly what the war criminals of old Earth used to say." The High Chancellor's breath came in short gasps. "Then, what do you want? What will satisfy your revenge?" Cole was silent for a moment. Then, with quiet finality, he spoke. "The Galactic Council," he said, "is finished." The words struck like a death sentence. At his command, Earth's AI forces initiated the final phase of the operation. Across Prime Nexus, every remaining military installation, every Council stronghold, every command center was systematically destroyed. The planet itself would not be annihilated. Humanity did not seek to repeat the Council's sins, but its rulers would never again wield power over the stars. The surviving Council members were taken into custody. Some would face trials. Others would simply disappear into the void, never to be seen again. And as Earth's fleet withdrew, leaving the once great capital of the galaxy in ruin, a single message was broadcast across all known frequencies, translated into every language, sent to every star system. The age of the Galactic Council is over. The age of Earth has begun. For the first time in history, the galaxy would no longer live under the rule of tyrants. No longer would the strong crush the weak without consequence. For the first time, the galaxy understood the price of threatening Earth, and it would never make that mistake again.